Hello everyone. I registered for the closed beta a long time ago, but I didn't get in. So it looks like that my pre-registration is allowing me to play this game a day early. I've been spending some time trying to figure it out and all of that, and I think I've figured it out to a point where I'm ready to talk about balance. I really do think this game is out of whack, and let's talk about why. We'll go ahead and start with Braum. So Brom can be a good card, but the problem is his kit or setup. Um, I'll talk about Challenger a little bit later, but let's kind of cover like why Brom is not as good as he could be. For starters, he's 0 power. Now, normally this wouldn't be an issue, but there are some keywords in this game that make it so Brom can't block those units. We'll talk about that when we go over Elise, but for right now, there's that. Then there's this. When I survive damage, summon a Mighty Poro. This is his unique when he's leveled. I don't think that this is useful at all because of the fact that it takes a lane to use it. If this was like a Poro that automatically did damage to the Nexus, then like, okay, yeah, I would understand it, and then like, it's discarded after that. That's something I can understand, but we all know that would be too broken. So what I would say is, to make Braum better, let's change his Take Heart so that he auto-casts it every time he takes damage. So, to make that balanced, we need to change this 3 over here to 1, so he's only getting 1 attack power each turn. Because obviously the objective is health, it's not damage anyways, but just to give him some damage so he can take care of a little crap, so he's not getting overwhelmed, that would be good. I would also change Challenger into Taunt, or the equivalent of previous card games, just because Challenger doesn't really work on Braum. Not only that, it takes forever to level him when he's blocking one unit at a time. If he's able to block multiple units at a time, that would make him level faster and make him more valuable. So that's kind of where I would say Braum needs to be better. So let's go and talk about Elise, just so we can cover what we were just discussing with the whole Fearsome thing. So Fearsome says can only be blocked by enemies with 3 or more power. Because Braum is 0, that means he can't block Elise or all the damn spiders that she summons. This is actually a very broken card. Let's just say that each spider is worth 1 mana. You're essentially paying 2 mana for 5 mana, is what it is. So Elise is very, very broken in my opinion. It only gets worse when she evolves. Because then all spiders get Challenger and Fearsome. Yeah, that's beyond broken. Because not only are you making every single spider fearsome, but you're making it so it completely gets rid of all the cards, the lower cards that is. Essentially what this is, it's making it elusive, right? A stronger elusive. Elusive cards, they can't block certain units in certain cases. So essentially what you're doing here is making a card that can completely ignore the enemy line and still not be elusive so you can block things. Like, that to me is very broken. And it only gets worse when you're talking about the other cards here. Let's go to the Shadow Isle deck so you can see what I'm talking about. Where's that one card? Here it is. Phantom Prankster. What I've seen players do is they'll do Shadow Isles and Noxus, and they'll use Phantom Prankster with the spiders. Essentially spam spiders and make the enemy take not only Nexus damage, but also lose cards in the process more than likely, depending what unit it is. That's really strong. This needs to be balanced so you're not using it with spider spam. This needs to be changed so when another phantasmal unit dies or something, or maybe make it so it triggers with last breath. Like, I could see that working, but not that. So yeah, there's that problem. But let's see, there's some other problems in here. Let's see if I can... here it is, Vengeance. Yeah, this is another problem in the Shadow Isle deck. So, kill a unit is just straight up too powerful. I think that this needs to be X amount of power. Like, you can't cast this on a unit with, say, more than 4 power or something like that. The ability to completely kill a unit that's been buffed for rounds upon rounds, let's just say a 2020 Tryndamere, that's just too broken. I'm sorry, but this has got to be balanced. There's just no way I can accept this as a card. So, yeah, that definitely needs to be changed. And some of the other cards in here probably do need to be changed. But unfortunately, I don't know the Shadow Isle deck well enough to cover that. Oh, wait, Ethereal, that's right. Let me see if I can find it. No, I just remembered one that I think needs to be balanced pretty hard. There's a card somewhere, and I just don't remember where it is. Well, anyways, there's a card in here that says that you can transfer an Ethereal from a unit to an enemy, is essentially what it is. So I think that that's pretty broken too, because it's essentially doing the same thing as Vengeance. It's a guaranteed kill on a unit, whether it's a champion or even a 2020 powered unit. So I think that the card that transfers Phantasmal should be either equal power or less than. So let's just say you're trying to transfer. Oh, let's see if we can find a Phantasmal unit real quickly. Soul Shepherd's not it. Ally, no, that's not it. Oh, here's an example. This is Ethereal. So like, let's just say that you were to transfer Ethereal from this unit to another unit, then it should only be a unit that's equal power, which in this case would be 3 power, because I don't think that there's any Ethereal units that are high in power. Let me just check that real quickly. Fearsome, Lifesteal, Fearsome. Yeah, so I think it should be equal power, so that way it's at least more fair, because the only way I can see right now that would become too strong is something if it was usable like Spectral Matron, because it makes an exact copy of a unit. So if it's making a copy of a unit with 6 or 7 power, then, or actually it probably should be even half of it. No, because there's actually some units are 10-10. Yeah, so that needs to be half power essentially. Yeah, that should be like half power. Yeah. Okay, well anyways, moving on. So let's talk about let's go ahead and talk about Demacia, because this is a really interesting deck, but the problem is Demacia doesn't really have any good way of triggering their synergy. For example, Battlesmith. When you summon an elite, grant it +1/+1. So it requires the Battlesmith to actually be in your hand. And unfortunately, there's no real way to summon that or any number of these units directly. What I mean is, if you look at, say, Gwent, which is the Witcher card standalone, and Gwent, before they changed everything, it was possible to trigger the same thing. So on Albion Pikeman, I forget their name, but the Pikeman could summon the other copies of its unit from the deck, right? So let's just say, for example, you did the same thing here with Vanguard Defender. It could summon all copies in the deck. That would be what I'm going for here, because, like I said, they don't really have enough card draw. There's let's see, where is it? Vanguard Redeemer. When I'm summoned, draw a unit if an ally died this round. So that's really hard to trigger because of just the way the coin flipping is. If this was maybe changed so it was like, I don't know, draw unit if an ally died this round or the prior round, like that I think would help. So that way it's a little bit easier to trigger. But that's just me. But yeah, that's one of, I think, one of the only ones in here that does have that. Here's another example. This is probably another good example where you could make that work. So Radiant Guardian says, when I'm summoned, grant me lifesteal and tough if an ally died this round. I think what you could do is change it so that it's summoned when an ally dies. That would probably be a good way of doing that, because then that way you're actually getting that synergy out and in the field as quickly as possible. Another thing too that I would think that would help Demacia is by changing the tough. To kind of understand where I'm coming from, let's first discuss like regen and things like that. So Demacia's playstyle is to essentially make a wall of steel. The whole playstyle with Demacia is to hold your ground until you can get very late into the game to summon cards like Tiana Crown Guard, Bright Steel Formation, or any one of these cards, right? Because with Tiana Crown Guard, essentially what you do, you summon her when you're ready to go on the attack, because she has Rally. Garen has the same thing too when he's evolved. You'll see that right here. Rally says if you don't have one, gain the attack token. You can attack this round. So that's the playstyle with Demacia, and I think it's a cool playstyle. Like, hold your ground, we'll get them when we're ready type of thing. But the problem is that they don't have anything like Braum in this deck, right? So I think what Tough should be is a combination of not only damage reduction, but regeneration as well. There's only a handful of Tough units in this deck. Plucky Poro, or actually no, I take that back. It should be just regeneration, because you don't want Plucky Poro regenerating. You want that unit to, that's a throwaway unit, but Vanguard Defenders aren't a throwaway unit. They're actually pretty tough. So I would say let's put regeneration on Vanguard Defender. Where's some of the other high-end tough ones? Let's see. Silverwing Scout, I think should get it too. Let's see. I know there's other ones in here. Oh, Vanguard Cavalry, I think that should get regeneration as well. Tiana Crown Guard, I think should get it as well. Cytherea the Bold, I think should get it as well. I think all those units should get regeneration so that you can utilize them for that steel wall strategy. While we're talking about playstyles and things, let's go ahead and quickly cover Challenger. I kind of breezed over it when I was talking about Brom, but that's just because I kind of need to get further into the explanation so you can understand where I'm coming from. So I have a problem with Challenger because of the fact that it can choose whatever unit it wants to, right? So this 3 mana card can essentially cancel out like a super buffed unit, right? Like one game I had a Tryndamere that was 2020, and yeah, it took me a while to summon Tryndamere, get him buffed and things. So by the time the coin flips happened, it happened in such a way that my opponent was on the attack, and he just used the Laurent Protege, which is the one down here. It's not this one, but he used that to completely cancel my 2020 Tryndamere. Just like the other 2 cards I was showing you were just that straight up kill unit things. Like, I think that this is kind of a similar pattern, only it's sacrifice a card to cancel out a 2020 that you probably spent 12 mana to essentially get there. So I think Challenger should be based on the base strength, right? Because we know the spiders can buff themselves. So if they buff themselves, then that makes Challenger expand, right? So I think Challenger should be the base strength. So the unchanging number, this one right here, 3. I think that it should always be that way. It should always be 3. Or the equivalent of whatever has Challenger. So I think that that's what needs to happen with Challenger in order to balance that out. Because right now, its current state, it's just too strong. Yeah, so that's that. Let's go ahead and quickly cover Freljord. Because this goes back to what I was talking about with like how you really need milling to make things happen. Because if you don't have any milling, then essentially you're at the mercy of RNG. There's been times where I couldn't draw like my 1-cost cards, and I kept drawing 6 mana cost cards. That's happened to me numerous times before, and that's just RNG, right? So as I pointed out, like, you know, some cards should be able to summon others and things like that. I think that would be a perfect way of handling it. But as it stands, Freljord is currently the best at milling, being able to draw their cards, essentially is what that means, right? So like right here, this is a perfect card. Avarosan Sentry, last breath, draw one. You're going to be throwing away this card anyways, so you might as well use it to kill another enemy unit and get a card in the process. Like, that's awesome. Let's see, where's some other good examples of card drawing here? I know there's some other ones. Where is it? It's like, oh, there it is. Babbling Bjerg, or however it's pronounced. Like this right here, when I'm summoned, draw a unit with 5+ power. Like, that's straight up awesome. See, that's really good card synergy right there, and that's really good in general, because you do want to mill, and not only that, it's pulling your best cards, which is, if you're playing Freljord, it's more than likely going to be an Alpha Wildclaw. Unless you're playing the Troop of Elunks thing. Then that's a different story. But it does go to show that milling can be countered. Because let's just say that, you know, this draws this premature, or no, wait, not that one. If it draws a Bolt Elunk prematurely, and you get this card like immediately after, then that milling is essentially canceled by the Babbling Bjerg. So there are ways to counter milling, and I think it's a perfectly fine mechanic to have, as it can be balanced out. But yeah, while we're at it, this is another really good milling card, because it's summon each Elunk in the top 10 cards of your deck. So granted, it's going to be more RNG involved than the other cards, and I do hope that changes so that it's just summon the other Elunks. But for right now, like, if you can hit that 10 cards of Elunks in your deck, like, that's pretty awesome. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the other cards, though, because while you know, this faction has really good milling, the problem is they don't have like the proper setup for some of their cards, like Scarmother Verena, I guess I pronounce her. When I survive damage, grant me 3 damage. Well, the problem is that this is a card that you clearly want to evolve over time, so it doesn't. It's, you either have to heal it, or it has to have some other method for surviving in order to become that, like, unit that slowly evolves over time. So I think this should get regen, just so it can function better with that. I think the same should happen to some of the other cards in here that are like that. Let's see if we can find them real quickly. Like Scarthane Stefan, I think he should have regen. Let's see. Oh, Unscarred Reaver, I think this should get regen as well. Yes, it's a 1-cost card, and it does have the potential to steamroll other cards if it does get that regen. But at the same time, there are cards to stop it. So, like, this right here is well within range of one of the Demacian spells, so you can counter it with that. Scarthane is well within range of some of the spells as well, so I don't think that's too much of an issue. And also because they're not gaining health, so they're only gaining attack, so that means that all you have to do is just overwhelm them with a higher damage champion, which is entirely possible. With, say, something like She Who Wanders or something like that, it's entirely possible. So I think that that is what could be done there. Okay, while we're talking about milling and stuff like that, let's hop over to Ionia. So Ionia is an interesting deck, because it does have some milling too, but the problem is it's entirely reliant on a low HP card. I'll show you why. Oh, and while seeing as I'm not scrolled down far enough for that card, let's just go and cover Deny. This needs to be changed to Burst, because a good number of the spells that are a problem are Burst. So I think that this Deny should be covering all spells via changing it to Burst. But anyways, Rivershaper. This is one of the milling cards that Ionia has. But the problem is it's 3 mana, 2/1. For a Shadow Assassin, you get 2/2. So, and elusive. So this card is really weak. But it is nice that it's a constant draw spells. I think that this unit and a couple of others could be like an off-board unit. I think that would be a way of making it work. I'll show you what I mean in just a second, but let's see if I can find some... I know there was another unit in Ionia that I wanted to talk about before I went into that. Oh, here it is, Ren Shadow Blade. Yeah, I just want to really quickly cover this before we go back to the off-board idea. So, when the enemy summons a follower granted ephemeral, I think that's really, really strong. Probably too strong, because that's a guaranteed kill. After a while. So, I think that this should be changed so it grants ephemeral to equal strength units, 6. I think that's a better way of doing it. But okay, let's talk about that off-board idea. So remember Rivershaper because it says strike, draw, spell. So let's go over to Freljord again, and then we'll go over to Demacia. So remember that one, and remember Warding Stones. It says start round, get an extra mana gem this round. Okay, so now let's hop over to Demacia. Battlesmith. So I think what we can do to make the synergy a little bit better with these factions is make it so that there's an off-board unit, right? So there would only be one of this, but it's granting +1/+1 and it's off to the side of the board, so it doesn't count as being a draw or part of the lane, right? That would be an easier way of triggering the synergy, because right now you're at the mercy of RNG, and this is not really helping in the current state. So this card is completely useless, but just because it's that reliant on RNG. You're better off using your card slots for something else in the current state. So I think that the River Striker, Battlesmith, and the Wordstone should be a 1 card off the board type of thing, and you can only have, I think 1 card off the board would probably be ideal, because then you don't, if you give them 2, then they're going to start stacking stuff like Battlesmith and Wordstone, and then that'll become a meta. So I think it should only be 1, so you're forcing decision from one of your factions, because you can dual faction right now. So with it being a limit of 1, it's saying, well, you need to pick either a Demacian unit that's off board, or you need to pick a Ionia unit that's off board, right? So obviously if you have the Rivershaper off board, it's going to draw spells. If you have the Battlesmith off board, it's buffing. If you have the Wardstone, it's granting you extra mana at the end of each turn. Now, if that was the case, then what I would do is I would just run Wordstones as my off board, go Demacia and Freljord, so that way I actually have the mana to get my steel wall up a lot quicker, because it does take some time for Demacia to get their stuff up, at least the good ones anyways. I guess you could probably do the same with Lauren Bladekeeper, because again, it's just too much mana and not really enough stats to really do much for you. It's just taking up precious space, because look, you can get 3/3/3, whereas this is 4/2/3. That's not good. So I think this could be grant an ally +2/+2 off the board each round. So it would be a little bit stronger on a single unit than Battlesmith, because Battlesmith would be basically any elite, and this one would be just 1 unit every round, right? So there'd be a difference between the two. I think that's what they should probably do with those. But yeah, let's go ahead and just finish with talking about Fiora while we're on Demacia. This is one I haven't seen yet in casuals, and that's probably because it does cost a lot. But let's talk about this crap right here. When I've killed 4 enemies and survived, you win the game. What is this right here? Seriously? That's just... I think that's too broken. Especially when you're talking about Fiora's Riposte and all this other stuff, so... Yeah, I think that needs a balance too, because that's just too broken. But I can keep going, but I think you get the gist of it. This game certainly has potential, but it's just not in a good state right now. I get it's a beta and all that, and I sure hope that down the road that they fix these things. But for now, that's all I have. Thanks for listening.